He was a morbidly obese surgeon destined for an operating table and an early death. Now he's a rebel MD who is fabulously fit and fighting to make America healthy again. This is Stay Off My Operating Table with Dr. Philip Ovadia.
And we're live. Hey, everybody, it's the Stay Off My Operating Table podcast with Dr. Philip Ovadia. I'm the talking hairdo, Jack Heald, and we are joined today by a guy I have actually been in the same physical space with. And I can't say that about, I don't know that I've ever been physically in the same place with any of our previous guests, Phil. So Stanwyck and I went and did, with a bunch of other guys, went and did things that would get us in trouble.
I think you should probably qualify that just to make sure we don't get into trouble.
We went and did that.
Everyone involved in the in that activity was fully clothed.
We were all clothed. We did a advanced handgun training workshop together with a bunch of other guys. Was that 2 days or was 3 days?
Well, we did. Well, I've done a 2-day and a 4-day. I don't know which. I don't know if you were at both.
Must have been the 2-day that we did together. So anyway,
okay.
But that has nothing to do with why we're here. Hey, Phil.
How we doing, Jack?
Why have we got this long-haired hippie on our show?
You're talking about Michael, right? Not yourself. So this question, right? So
fair enough.
Yeah, this should be a great episode because the three of us actually, kind of know each other in real life. But Michael has some great messaging and is doing some great work around the same shared goals as which is getting people healthier. And I've been fortunate to know Michael for a couple of years now. And as I said, he's involved in the health and fitness space, has a little bit of a different spin on it, a unique perspective on it. And I think that would be something great to introduce to our audience. So with that, I'm going to introduce Michael Stanwyck to our audience and let him tell them a little bit about himself.
Hi, guys. If I had known it was going to be like this, I would have prepared a speech. My name is
going to be.
I didn't know I was just going to have to introduce myself. My name is Michael Stanwyck.
To introduce you? I could do that.
That's probably a bad idea.
Michael
Stanwyck. I have been involved in health and fitness now for as a profession for about 15 years, as a lifestyle since I was probably around 18 years old, and now I'm 50. So you can do the math on that. But I got involved in CrossFit in the early days, back in 2006. And it was kind of the wild west of the new age, I think, of health and fitness. And, that was really the beginning of turning, I think, the health and fitness world upside down. Up until then, bodybuilding was sort of the reigning model for how you got healthy in the gym. Low-fat dieting was the model for how you ate. And CrossFit came along as this little bit of an experimental laboratory of fitness. And through that, I got introduced to a whole bunch of different concepts, different kinds of dieting. We were probably among the first people to really adopt paleo, and then really get into keto, and then
we being
the CrossFit world, and then carnivore when that sort of started to emerge. But one of the things through all of this and through my running of a CrossFit gym, I joined what was officially the 11th CrossFit gym in the country. And we struggled with getting our clients to eat well. It was not hard. It was not hard to get them to work out. That was the fun part. People love to show up at the gym. They love to throw things around. They love to be doing something different from what everybody else was doing. But when it came to eating well, it was kind of hard to do something different from what everybody else was doing. And so over the years, we tried different models of coaching, different models of programs. And, just by chance, CrossFit decided to put on a little bit of a seminar on nutrition, and we traveled down. We were invited down because we were an early affiliate, and we checked it out as a 2-day seminar, and it was terrible. And me and my business partner, my boss at the time, Andy Petronic, were lying in our hostel. We were staying in a youth hostel in San Diego. We were like, this is this is a terrible seminar, but this is a really important thing to tackle. And so we decided we were going to come up with our own thing. Like, this was not going to be the answer. None of our clients were going to ever do this. It was super boring. It was super, intellectual, and there was nothing actionable about it. So we decided we were going to come up with this seminar, this like 12-week seminar, and we were going to do it in person with people, and we're going to really teach them what was going on in their body. And we were going to do blood testing. I mean, this was back in like 2010. Getting blood testing back in 2010 really took a lot of wheeling and dealing. I worked with a chiropractor who could write the script, and a blood testing lab. We kind of cobbled it all together. We did a bunch of blood testing. We did a bunch of seminars. We did some one-on-one coaching. And after 12 weeks, it was a total flop. I mean, and that's not to say that people didn't see changes. They did. The people who stuck with it saw huge changes in their diet. They saw huge changes in their blood measurements. Their A1C came down, all the things they wanted to see, but people just couldn't stick with it. I probably started with, about 12 to 15 people at my gym, and I probably ended with 4. And the 4 who stayed were like my good friends. And so we realized it wasn't a model that was going to work. And both Andy and I, my partner, Andy Petronic, are pretty big self-improvement junkies and always have been. And we became aware of all the things that worked in the self-improvement world. Things like scoreboards were really big. Things like community were really big. Community was really big in CrossFit. And so we decided we're going to just mash all this stuff together and try something. And instead of telling people what they should do, we just said, this is what you'll lose points for. And we created the Whole Life Challenge. And the Whole Life Challenge was this really simple model. You were going to take 8 weeks, and every day you were going to start with a batch of points, and you could lose them. And you could lose them based on the foods you ate. You could lose them based on what you didn't do. If you didn't exercise, if you didn't stretch. At the time, fish oil was all the rage. So fish oil was the 4th habit at the time. And it was a revolution in our gym. It completely changed the way people behaved, because rather than just having the spotlight on them when they were in the gym, they had the spotlight on them when they were at home, right? Because everybody, every day when they logged their score, could see how well they sort of did the reps at their meals, and how well they paid attention to what was important. And there were people who refused to lose points until I lost points, and I wasn't going to lose a point. And so after
that's really interesting.
Yeah, I had clients who were like, when are you going to lose a point so I can lose a point, please? And after 8 weeks, I mean, we had people who achieved results they had never thought possible. I mean, people who lost 30 inches off their body, total. We were measuring hips and waist and thighs and arms. We had people who
8 weeks.
In 8 weeks, we had people who had buy entirely new wardrobes. We had people bringing in their clothes that no longer fit, and we were hanging them from the ceiling of the gym. And at the end of the challenge, we just donated them all to charity. And, what ended up happening was, rather than be in this kind of nanny position of being like, you should do this, you should do that, let me read your food diary, let me point out to you what you already know you did wrong, I just said, I don't care. I don't care what you do. It is totally up to you. You're a grown ass adult. You can do whatever you want to do. But in this game, these are the things that are going to cost you points. And if you know CrossFitters, points are very important. And so it really changed the way they addressed things. Every time they made a choice, it wasn't like, oh, I'm just going to have to talk to Michael about this in a week, and he's going to absolve me, and he's going to give me penance, and I'm going to be fine for the next week. It was like, no, if I do this, I have to tell everybody I did it. Everybody's going to know. The other bonus to this was, like, it helped people.
So
it helped
this
people.
peer pressure thing happening.
You had so the community, the peer pressure, but also it gave people a sense of these things have consequences. And mostly with your diet, it might take 5 years. It might take 10 years. It might take 20 years before you see the real consequences. But this gave you a consequence today, right? And so people started to behave totally different. Yeah. And so we thought, yay, that was a cool thing. Let's do it again next year. Okay, bye.
It's more than feedback. It's immediate consequences.
Right. It's immediate consequences.
You know what, Michael? I realize I'm not telling you anything you don't know, because you have children. But that's effective parenting. is there are immediate consequences for behavior. And I tell young parents, your job as a parent is to design consequences. That's almost job one.
Well, I
And
think as consequences go, they say most people in this country don't read above a third grade level. I think many people don't understand the concept of consequences above a third grade level, right?
wow,
It has to be immediate. It has to be right now. Like with my 4-year-old,
yeah,
consequences have to happen immediately and they have to be
yes.
short term. Like if I take a toy away, he has to get it back tonight or tomorrow. Otherwise he forgets it existed, right? So this feedback loop has to be very short. Yeah, like 3 weeks from now, he'll look and be like, why is my truck on top of the refrigerator? And he doesn't remember
Right.
the whole incident. But if you
Yeah.
make that feedback loop super short, people start to change their behavior very, very rapidly.
We literally could stop right now.
Yeah.
You have just heard everything you need to hear about how to make effective and fairly quick changes in your life.
Well, yeah. And so we built a
I don't
platform.
want to drive you off the rails, but I don't know that I've ever heard it said more succinctly. It's
Well,
just
and that's why we built this platform, right? When we first did it, we didn't really have much of a platform. We had clients who are programmers like, yeah, we can do a scoreboard and a point system. And I linked it to a blog and we linked it to a forum. So we had an effective website.
right.
We did it again the next year. And we're like, hey, what will be cool? Let people invite their friends and their family, not just gym members, right? And so people
Mm.
brought their husbands, their wives, their cousins, their whatever. And we had and they came to us and they said, my brother who lives in Poughkeepsie, we were in Los Angeles, he who we've never met, who I've never talked to, I've never seen, I'll never know. He got the results that he's been looking for 10 years by doing this. And so we were like, this is interesting. Maybe we should try and make this bigger than the gym. And so we built yet another website. And a year later, we launched it and we allowed a select group of CrossFit gyms to register. And it was just immediate 150 gyms, 8,000 people. They all wanted something. They'd heard about it. They heard the results. They all wanted something like this. And from then on, Andy and I were like, okay, we should reconsider what we're doing with our lives, right? Not that running a CrossFit gym was bad or unsatisfactory, but we were immediately having an effect on thousands of people that we never meet, we'd never know. And we were sort of outsourcing it. We were replicating ourselves among their coaches. We were giving them the language to say to their people. We were facilitating this kind of experience all over the country and really actually all over the world. Because at this point, except for Antarctica, the Whole Life Challenge has been done on every continent. And maybe it's been done in Antarctica. I don't know.
So if you're listening to this and you live in Antarctica and have done the Whole Life Challenge, please contact Michael. So check.
I would love to say all continents.
Or if you want to plant the flag, you can just go there for 8 weeks and do the challenge from there.
There you go.
I have a friend who actually just vacationed in Antarctica, which is really strange. I never even knew you could do that, but she just went and spent a couple of weeks in Antarctica. But yeah, and so from there, we just kept rolling. We did it once a year, and then we did it twice a year, and then we did it 3 times a year, and then we shortened it because 8 weeks turned out to be a really long time. Everybody lost steam around 6 weeks, so we're like, okay, how do we have more people succeed at this? Let's just make it 6 weeks. As people are getting the results, it's diminishing returns. I want people to feel successful. I want them to finish. We shortened it to 6 weeks, and now we do it 4 times a year. So it's 6 weeks on, 6 weeks off, and we have had people who since we started have done the challenge 25, 30 times. They just keep coming back and doing it every 6 weeks, like it's a tune-up, like it's a practice, like it's because if you think about it, it's not, you're not doing something you don't want to be doing. You're doing something you want to be doing. I want to be paying attention to the food that I put in my mouth. I want to make sure I'm accountable for working out, for stretching, for getting a good night's sleep. I mean, we were among, I think, the first people I was aware of to incorporate, to say all of it matters. Your sleep matters. Your well-being matters. Meditation matters. Practice matters. Rest matters. All of this stuff it's not just diet and exercise. It's being very intentional about listening to your body, what it needs, what your mental health is. Your mental health is going to contribute to your physical health. Your physical health is going to contribute to your mental health, and to incorporate all of this into the game. And we really made it a game. We built a website that rewards you. It gives you badges. It gives you, you can have streaks when you play. You can win bonuses. And that, I think, was the really interesting thing. We started to give people bonuses. We're like, if you are consistent in the nutrition category, give you a bonus and you can use it. If you want to go out on the weekend and have a glass of wine, go to somebody's birthday party and celebrate with them, it's not going to cost you, because you have, in a sense, you have maintained that kind of at least 80-20 approach, 85-15 things, and you can use it. And it doesn't cost you.
It's carbon credits.
It doesn't cost. Yeah, it doesn't cost you. It's not counted against you, because we're very realistic about what people's long-term kind of view of their life is going to be. I'm not going to be 100%. I mean, there are going to be people who are going to be 100% carnivore forever. They're few and far between.
Yeah.
But some people they want to do it. They want to be 80-20. They want to be 90-10, something like that. And they want to have a sense of when I am actually living in what people call moderation, right? Because everyone just says moderation. And what they usually mean is I get to drink whenever I want, right? And what moderation really comes down to is like having a sense of where your edges are and knowing what that middle path is, knowing what throws you off. And that's what the whole life challenge is all about. It's about paying close attention for 6 weeks to what does you good, what improves your life, what you can sustain. Because most people, the funny thing was, when we started, we had a very close contact with our clients who were doing the challenge. And there were people who insisted on being perfect, right? They did a CrossFit workout 7 days a week. And we're like, no, that's not the point. The point is you're active 7 days a week. Right. So you can take a day off, but just make sure you get outside and take a walk or ride your bike to the beach or something like that. You don't have to turn it up to 11 7 days a week. You want to pay attention to what your body needs, but you also want to understand that your body needs to move. And so, so you get to design, this is what exercise is for me today. And if I do that, check. This is what sleep, when we introduced sleep, we finally said, how do we do sleep? Because not everybody can get 8 hours of sleep a night, right? If they're night shift people, if they only get 6 hours, we just said, okay, what would be an improvement for you? 6.5, 6 hours and 20? You commit to that improvement. And if you do that, check, you're done, right? So this is really a program of taking incremental steps towards an end goal. If you did the whole life challenge for a year and took incremental steps every time you did it, you would end up somewhere sort of unrecognizable to you, but something that you would ultimately be able to sustain. It would be your life. It wouldn't be the sort of, what do you do on day 76 of 75 hard, right? You have burned yourself out after 2.5 months. And you can't do it all. And you don't know which parts to do and which parts not to do and what it's okay. It's a mess. So we're all about that incremental movement towards an ultimate goal. And for some people, it takes a year. Some people, it takes 2 years. But all along the path, you're becoming a different person.
So let's kind of tie that back. I want to go back to sort of the genesis story here. You have a bunch of people, doing CrossFit, and anyone who has ever walked into a CrossFit gym know that, it's not something you do by accident. And it's really, pushing the limits of what most people would consider, like a normal activity to do. There are some crazy things that, go on in CrossFit gyms. And yet you had a bunch of these people doing these crazy activities, doing extreme levels of activity, and they weren't successful in, in other parts of their life. They weren't, eating well, essentially, or they weren't paying attention to their diet. What was going on there? Was it that they kind of figured that, I'm doing this crazy activity so I can pretty much eat whatever I want?
That's probably part of it. I mean, the reality is they're still people, right? They're still human beings. And I think as human beings, that's probably something to the effect of, I am doing all of this really hard work 5-6 days a week. So that means I can afford to do all this other stuff. But there was no kind of let's say, intentionality about it, right? No, you can't go out every weekend and have 12 drinks, right? No amount of CrossFit is going to balance out all, because that alcohol is not just calories. I mean, it's just it's a nuclear bomb to your system. So I think there was a lot of, I've earned this, this is why I do this. But I think most of it is just consistency, right? And this is something that I did discover when I was working with people on their food journals. I remember one time I was working with this woman, and she would bring me her food journal, and we'd go through it. And by and large, she was on track, right? Her meals were good. What she was making for herself was the right thing. But then she'd be like, be like a bite of a cookie. Oh, I made cookies for my kids after school, and I had some. And then it'd be like a handful of M&Ms. Oh, I was at the, whatever, this office, and I just grabbed this. And there were so many little areas where I was like, you know what, you might as well just have a dessert a day, right? Because when you add all this stuff up, all of this stuff that you're writing off as just a bite, just a nibble, just a little bit here and there, actually adds up to quite a bit. And the problem is you're not aware of it, right? Because it's so small, you're not aware that it's actually adding up to anything. And most of the time when people don't keep food journals, they even forget that they did those things.
Yeah.
So the consistency element is what really got introduced. Like, people started to reach for something, and then they would, is this worth a point? And that sort of actually became a little bit mantra. Would I give up a point for this? Would I trade a point for this? And that's something that is like a sort of a heuristic or a little model that people would use for themselves after the challenge was over. They'd be like, would I trade a point for this? Would this be worth it?
Would this be worth a point?
Right. Or is it just an impulse? Because nobody's as consistent as they think they are. Nobody's as aware as they think they are. Nobody has the willpower that they think they do. And a lot of people are really capable of bullshitting themselves, quite honestly, right? Like, even if they're very regimented, and they cook all of their meals on Sunday, and they box them up for themselves, and they kind of eat through that all week long, they still can go out and do things that they just don't even allow themselves to remember that they did, right? Because they justified it at the time. They said, I do all this, so I'm going to do that. And when somebody asks them if they ever eat like crap or eat shitty food, they just say no. Right? They just, because in their mind, they do well enough where they don't have to pay attention to the times they don't eat. They eat shitty food. And I want to be really clear. I'm perfectly okay with shitty food, right? Like, I'm a bit of a dessert junkie. But a practice like this, and I've been doing this now for over 10 years, has made me much more conscientious about it. I mean, I've been known to eat all of the dessert at a wedding. And when I say all the dessert, I mean everybody else's. I was at a wedding one year, and they were serving churros as the dessert.
Ugh.
And everyone had a little churro, and they went to the dance, and they made a bunch of churros, and they put them all in cups all over the room. And I thought, nobody's here. And I ate all the churros in the room. And everybody came back, and they were like, where are the churros? And I was like, I told my wife, I was like, I ate all the churros. And that was, and I wouldn't do that today. The practice has actually led me to really simple.
The narrator says Michael was never invited to a wedding.
One of the examples I give, so I work with a couple of people, in a small group setting out of the Whole Life Challenge. And one of the stories I like to tell them is, and because I think this is so important, this is everyday shit. Every day, every time you go to the supermarket, you walk through that checkout line, and what's right there is candy, right? It's the last thing you see. And I used to walk through, and one of my favorite things in the world was a Snickers bar. I'd walk through, and I'd be like, Snickers bar, I want one, buy it, eat it. And then a little later, I was like, I think about it. I go, okay, what's the week been like? Can I have a Snickers bar? Yeah, it's been pretty good. Okay, Snickers bar. And I buy it and I eat it. And then I got to the point where I'd look at the Snickers bar, and I don't need it. I don't need it. And I can't remember the last time I bought a Snickers bar at the supermarket.
I got to tell you, this is so helpful to have somebody who's basically been fit his whole life, based on your story. Maybe you're lying, I don't know. But to have somebody who's basically been fit his whole life talk about this progression,
It's a struggle for everybody. Like I said, we're
Exactly.
all human beings. I was another individual I was working with. I write a weekly email, and I wrote something about one of the struggles I have with being consistent with workouts, especially when it gets colder outside. And we were speaking at one of his we were talking at one of his one-on-one sessions, and he said that email, he goes, I don't know if you were channeling me, but like it really spoke to me. I said, bro, I wasn't channeling you. I'm exactly like you.
Yeah.
I just have more practice. This is just something that I've been doing for longer than you. And, and as again, as I walk by that Snickers bar, I see it, I know how much I like it, but it just doesn't have any power over me anymore. I can walk away and there's no regret. And I don't think about, I should have had it. I just have this one. It's over. It's over. And so I think the whole life challenge is really built around this idea that you can't just have all of this tomorrow. Many people have spent 20 or 30 years building the crappy lifestyle that they have today. They're not going to undo it in 6 weeks.
Yeah.
They may make a significant dent in it in a year, but if you try and undo it in 6 weeks, if you try and change everything about your life in 6 weeks, it's going to be so far from your baseline. It's going to be really hard, if not impossible, for you to maintain for a long period of time. I think it's really important for people to understand that this is a process and it takes time, and it's taken, and I'm not, yes, I have been, a healthy and fit person since I was a teenager. And a lot of that has to do with the fact that that's when I started working out. And that's when I started paying attention to my nutrition. And I have now for 30 years. But that means I have 30 years of practice. That means I have, 30 years of experimenting, knowing what works for me, knowing what doesn't work for me. It doesn't mean that you should look at me and go, well, look at you. You've always been fit, so it's not hard for you.
There we go.
Yeah.
The it's not hard for you excuse. I love that.
But it is.
But it is.
It is. I struggle with the same kind of breakdowns around not wanting to go to the gym, wanting to just eat a shitty meal. I cook dinner for my family every night. And sometimes I'm like, you know what? I just wish I could just throw a pot of spaghetti on and pour on a jar of ragu, because making a good meal, I mean, it doesn't have to take forever, but I'm in the kitchen for 30, 45 minutes or an hour to put a good meal on the table. Sometimes I just want to go get pizza and a burger.
Just call Papa John's.
And you know what? I'm not going to lie. Sometimes I do, but it's so infrequent. Like, maybe we order pizza 3 times a year. And the thing I'm most proud of is that that's how my kids are growing up. They don't grow up with the idea that pizza is a meal. If I give my kids anything besides meat and vegetables, and maybe rice, potatoes, fruit, they go, this is, I mean, my son has gotten to the point where he says, this is crap food.
How old is he?
He's 4.
Oh, I love it.
He's 4. I mean, he knows the things that his friends bring to school for lunch is crap food, is not real food. And that to me is the most exciting result of all of this is like the concept of my kids have of that real food is real food.
Oh,
Yeah,
I say this a lot, Phil, but God, this is my favorite. This is my favorite interview yet. This is
your favorite one this week.
There's
But
so
yeah,
much
no, they
music.
just keep getting better and better. And I think all these ideas, feed into each other. And, let's talk a little bit more about, because you mentioned, some of the areas that are scored, let's say, or tracked in the challenge, your activity and your food and your sleep. But what are some of the other areas that you look at? This is another unique thing about the challenge.
Right. So we call them the 7 daily habits. And as far as I'm concerned, aside from esoteric stuff that people like to get into, it really covers every bucket, right? So you have nutrition, exercise, mobility, sleep, hydration, well-being, and reflection. And so, when we talk about nutrition, we don't have a hard prescription. We have 3 recommended kind of levels for nutrition. We call one performance, basically paleo. One is lifestyle, which is just a little bit more, I don't want to call it meta-training because it's not specifically meta-training, but it has a lot of the elements that people might recognize from meta-training. People can have grains and, they can have cheese and they can have milk and stuff like that. And then we have what's called Kickstart. And that's just like, don't eat seed oils, don't eat sugar, don't eat processed food, stop drinking alcohol or beer, and don't eat fried food. Like it's very basic. It's trying to help people who are not nowhere close to being able to adopt something like a paleo lifestyle. But if you have a diet that you want to be held accountable for, that's what you can use, right? This is about facilitating something for you. We provide these levels for people who just don't know where to start and they don't have a model for themselves. But if you have your own, you bring it. This is about accountability. And then exercise, you are required to exercise for at least 10 minutes a day. Now, the genesis of that was we wanted you to exercise every day. And if you didn't exercise, we wanted you to at least do some active recovery for at least 10 minutes a day, right? So that if that meant doing a little bit of yoga, riding your bike, going for a walk or something like that. Most people by and large don't just say, okay, I exercise 10 minutes, I'm good to go. But what it allows for is for people to make space even when they don't have it. Right. So if today is super busy and I know I'm not going to get to the gym, I don't write it off, because if I just stand up at my desk and for 10 minutes, I do some squats, I do some push-ups, I do whatever, or if I go out for a walk for 10 minutes, I can say I made the space in my life for exercise today, and I get to maintain the consistency and I get to keep that as a sort of an awareness in my life. And then you have mobility, which is, you probably know at this point is more than just stretching. It's the health of your joints, it's strength through range of motion, but a practice of mobility, 10 minutes every day. Sleep, which is like I said, it's kind of a choose your own adventure. How much sleep do you want to get? How much sleep would be an improvement over what you're getting now? Give yourself something to stretch for, but make it something that you can probably get every night of the challenge, right? Like, because most people have a practice around sleep, which involves like BSing around bedtime, right? Like a little bit of scrolling, a little bit of this, watching one episode too many on TV. Most people's struggle is not that they're shift workers or that they have kids or something like that.
Yeah.
So if you can make an extra 20 minutes work for bedtime, do that, because I want you to be successful every night. Then we have a hydration requirement. And hydration is tough because we all know like the whole 8 glasses a day of water is kind of a BS sort of model for hydration. But we do want to give people the practice of paying attention to when they're thirsty. So we just say, take your body weight, take a third of that, right? So I'm 180, 60 ounces is my minimum requirement. It's not that much water. It's not going to be too much water for people that, where they're going to be up all night pissing. But unless you forget about it and drink it right before bed. But it is going to give people the idea that maybe you should just have water instead of soda. Maybe you should have a glass of water with your meal, or something like that. And so that's hydration. And then well-being practices. And well-being practices is kind of a spectrum. We have well-being. So if somebody has a practice for their personal well-being, whether it's journaling or meditation or something like that, bring that to the challenge. That can be what you're held. I want to do that. Make sure I do that every day. So you can be held accountable for that every day. If you don't, we introduce a new well-being practice every week. And if you like it, the first one, you can keep it the whole challenge. If you don't, if you want to just experience all 6, you can do a new one every week. And they range everything from sort of like the inner work, which might be meditation or journaling. There are practices that encourage you to connect with the members of your community. There are practices that are just about cleaning up your environment, whether it's your mental environment, your physical environment. We definitely have practices around electronics and social media. So you might have a week of disconnecting from social media, but you might just have a week of like what we actually will start the New Year's challenge with is just the digital sundown, right? Like 2 hours, 3 hours before bed, you're off your phone. You don't turn it on until 7:30 in the morning. So we're not saying you can't be on social media. We're not saying we hate social media. We're not saying we think your phone is all evil, but we want to give you the ability to draw boundary lines. And so we introduce these practices to you every week and allow people to experiment with these different practices week by week. And then the final practice is reflection, because we want to give people, and reflection actually came from one of our participants. After the second challenge we did, where we let people bring their friends in, I was talking to the friend of a friend, We didn't have reflection yet. And he said, I just love that each day I get to sit down and reflect on how well my day went. And I was like, that's a really good point. And it's not just I reflect by checking off boxes. It's like I actually get to have a conversation with myself about how well it went for me. Like, did I do everything I wanted to do? Did I kind of cut corners a little bit? And so we added the habit of reflection, which is just a moment. It's like 25 characters minimum. And you just get to say something about how your day went. Did you do what you said you were going to do? Did you want to do more? What's your plan for tomorrow? Celebrate your successes, anything that you want to do. But we make constant reflection a part of like just tying the day, closing the day off. You did the habits, you said something about it, you put it to bed, you start fresh tomorrow. And those are the 7 daily habits of the Whole Life Challenge.
Tell us some of your favorite success stories.
I mean,
losing 30 inches in 8 weeks is pretty astonishing, but yeah, there's
so I have a story that happened very early on. We had a supporter very early on in the challenge. He was a local guy. He had been a personal training client of Andy's, my ex-boss, my current business partner. And he's kind of a big old, muckety muck now. He had a small company back then, but he's gone on to work for Beats by Dre and Apple. And now I think he works for Louis Vuitton. Now he lives in Paris, but he was a big fitness guy. But he loved the model of the Whole Life Challenge. And he invited his daughter at the time. I can't remember if she was in high school or college. She might've been college. So she was away to do it with him. And I guess they just had some trouble connecting since she moved away or since she'd become an adult, and they did the Whole Life Challenge together. And it completely changed the way they connected. And he contacted us afterwards. He says, I got my daughter. I have my daughter now in a way that I never did before, because we got to do something together that was so important and so positive, where we got to support each other and we got to change our lives for the better together. And now our relationship is entirely different. And then he got his father to do it.
Wow.
And after that challenge, he was like, guys, you guys added 5 years to my dad's life. Right. And so through the course of inviting his family members to do the challenge with him, he got an entirely new family, right? He had a new relationship with his daughter. He had his father for more time than he ever thought he was going to have him. And this is what I think the most important thing about the community aspect of the Whole Life Challenge really is, how often do people say, I'm going to go on a diet, I'm going to change my life, and yet the people around them are not. Right. And so they all go out together, and this person's trying to they're trying to order something healthy on the menu, and everyone's kind of giving them a hard time, be like, come on, bro, just have this, just have that. This allows you to create community around this. And so not only do you recruit people who want to have the same kind of success you do, and therefore you're in the same boat, and you're finding ways to socialize in new ways during the challenge. But when it's over, right, you're not just walking back into this group of people who haven't changed. You're walking along, further along with the group of people who have changed just like you. We had a group of young guys, four friends, just dudes, right? 20-something dudes, drinkers, pizza eaters, everything, right? And they did the challenge together, and they started to reshape what they did socially. On Friday nights, they no longer got pizza together. They did something else because pizza wasn't compliant on the challenge. They started to open up their eyes to new possibilities for young men in their lives. And when they were done, the four of them had collectively lost 140 pounds or something like that. We made a joke that it was as though they had lost a team member over the course of the challenge, because that was the size of one of them.
We lost an entire person.
So my favorite stories have to do with not just that people lost weight. It's that how they did it and how they learned to address this important issue in their life changed the way they lived their life. There was a woman who wrote me an email. I remember this is the first time I think I was really affected, and I couldn't have said why in the moment. She wrote me an email and she said, I get up, and this is so Jordan Peterson. She said, I get up every day and I make my bed now. And what that said to me was, I don't wake up hating my life anymore. I wake up with positive energy. I wake up like what I'm going to do today is going to make a difference. I wake up and I change I act in my environment at the moment I open my eyes. And so those, I mean, of course, I love hearing stories from people like, I started this challenge on 5 medications and now I'm on 1. And, my favorite stories are like, my doctor says, I don't know what you're doing, but keep doing it. And I'm like, do you want to know? Do you want to know what they're doing? Like, because I'll be happy to tell you. Like, it's so often just like, I don't know what it is. Don't tell me. I don't have time for it. But you keep doing it. So I do like just the new lease on life that people experience when they go through these kinds of transformations.
Bill, can I put you on the spot a little bit?
Sure.
As someone who dealt with all of the challenges, not just physical, but mental, social, psychological, involved in being obese, and has put that behind you, I'd love to hear you reflect on the areas that aren't physical, how your life has changed as a result of getting that under control.
Yeah,
Particularly in light of what Michael all of this that he just described.
right. And this is, I think maybe, those end up being the more important part of this journey, and whether doing it, through the challenge or just, the way that I talk to my patients and my clients these days is, it really, if that part of it doesn't take hold, the rest of it isn't going to matter, because you're not going to stick to the diet. You're not going to continue the exercise. You're not going to keep optimizing your sleep or any of that if, you don't have the mindset right. And, this is why, when I look at the sort of the areas of the challenge and I look at the principles of metabolic health that I lay out in the book, and we see, how those all overlap. And, the concept that I talk about of, thinking of your health as a system, not as a goal. And this is exactly it. You're developing that system for health. It's really not about the 6 weeks that you're doing the challenge. It's about, what is that setting you up for the rest of your life? And for me personally, it's exactly that. I realize, that I never identified as a healthy person. It wasn't important to me to be a healthy person when I was unhealthy. I was a heart surgeon and I was helping other people and this and that, but I wasn't identifying myself as a healthy person. And now I do. It is part of my identity. And that's why, 7 years later on my journey, I'm still here. And I'm still doing the things, and like I said, maybe whether it's the diet you want to talk about, the activity, the stress management, the sleep, all of these areas, they all start with you identifying that as an important part of your life. And what Michael said about the lady who, said, I get up every morning and I make my bed. Why is that important? Does making your bed make you healthier? No, of course not. It doesn't. But what that means to yourself, that you're paying attention to your life to the point that you make sure you make your bed every morning, is very much relates to your health.
And the fact that she knew it, right? Because that's what she told me, right? That's the one thing that she told me was I make my bed every day. So like, she obviously was aware that that was a very important, like, benchmark. Like, it was a bellwether of like something important is happening in my life. I'm taking care of myself in ways that I wasn't before. And I think while you and I, we have the same goal, metabolic health, right? And it's interesting because you have an approach to it that's I think as a doctor it's very appropriate, right? The blood measurements are very important, and the markers of metabolic health are very important. And we actually, for a period of time, we had all of that in our system, right? You could track all of these blood measurements. You could track your weight. You could track, right now we do give people the ability to track some measurements, your weight or your body fat percentage or some girth measurements and a workout. but we added all these tiers of analysis that you could do with all the blood testing. And the reality is, it was overwhelming for people to do on their own. Most people didn't do it. And I think what we realize is just we have a different role to play. And it's not that those numbers aren't important, but what you'll hear people talk about when it comes to their experience with the challenge is it's in the area, like you said, with mindset, but it has so much to do with, I have more compassion for myself now, right? Because developing compassion for yourself means, like, I know that I'm going to stumble sometimes. I know that I'm going to let myself down. I know that I'm not going to meet my expectations, but I also know that I'm a human being and I deserve to have compassion for myself. And so when people can learn that, they can take this journey and not worry so much about what happens if next month doesn't turn out the way that I wanted it to turn out. I have compassion for myself. And that, I remember a woman I saw on Twitter once, and she had this just fantastic transformation, right? Like, she went from very overweight to this really healthy, vibrant, bright woman. And she had made this comment about who knew that self-loathing could lead to self-love, and she talked about how she bullied herself into her current state. And so I came back on her. I just wanted to challenge her. I said, look, here's the thing. You didn't loathe yourself. You just weren't willing to admit that you loved yourself, but you did, because you wouldn't have been able to do this for somebody you didn't love. You just wouldn't have been able to do it if you didn't think you deserved it. And so I think
powerful.
And I think the sooner people get in touch with that love for themselves, the compassion for themselves, that they're worth doing the work for, they have an entirely new outlook, and they're willing to have patience, and they're willing to take the time that it takes.
We are well past the point in this conversation where people want to know, what do I do next? And
so
I'm not saying we got to stop talking, but there are people listening right now who go, okay, what do I do? What's the next step? So give us that.
So, like I said, we do a challenge 4 times a year. We do have one for the New Year's. The magic thing about it is it doesn't start until January 21st, right? We don't start January 1st, right? Because people just aren't ready yet. Plus, we like 3 weeks into the New Year's, because then people start to go like, oh, I think I need a little help with this, right? I think I need a little help back up on this resolution that I made. We're at wholelifechallenge.com. If you go to wholelifechallenge.com, you can sign up to play with us on our New Year's challenge. It's 6 weeks. But if you sign up now, you can actually explore the platform. You can start with the accountability today if you wanted to, right? You can access, the challenge is live the platform is live between challenges. So we do have annual subscribers, right? And between challenges, they're free to continue to use the platform, hold themselves accountable for the habits that they want to be accountable for during the challenge. All right, because we call the challenge the whole life challenge. So it is 6 weeks of addressing your whole life. Between the challenge, you might say, look, I've kind of got sleep down. I don't really need to drive that one home every day, but I still do struggle with my nutrition and this well-being practice. I'm going to hold myself accountable for that year round, and they can continue coming in. We've just actually launched a new part of the platform called groups. So we used to have what we call teams. You started the challenge, you came in with your team, you did it with the challenge. And when the challenge was over, that team just disappeared. And if you wanted to do it again, you came back in and you brought those people back together again. Well, we realized how impractical that was for people who were doing the challenge over and over again, and for people who were in there between challenges. And so we expanded it to groups, so people can have this more social experience between challenges. The groups will exist when the challenge isn't going on. If you form one of your family and friends, it will be here when you come back in the spring, in the summer, in the fall. But the platform is really there for you year round now.
I'm sharing, for those of you who are listening, you're not seeing this, but I just did a quick share of the homepage of the Whole Life Challenge. Cool.
Yeah.
So
that's us.
You answered a question that came to mind. I've got this group of guys I get together with every week, and I would love to have, there's sometimes there's 10, sometimes there's 12, sometimes there's 16 of us, but I would love to have a thing that we could all do for 6 straight weeks together. And I'm going to pitch it to them. I'm going to say,
Yeah.
hey,
And you get your own little, you can start your own little private group. Nobody else is in it, right? You can be in there. You get your own private communication feed. You'll see what your buddies are saying in their reflections, right? So they make their reflection and it posts the communication feed. So you know how the challenge is going for them. And if you do the challenge and you don't have anybody who wants to do it with you, there are always groups of people who are like, this group is for everyone, right? Like, and there's groups that are like 50 and over. That's what this group is about. We have a couple people who have been leading groups in the challenge, I mean, for years. So they're very experienced in helping people who have never done it before get the support that they need if they're there alone. So, you can get in there and find those public groups and get the support that you want from just a really fantastic group of people who are up to the same thing you are, even if you just can't either get people to do it with you, or if you're just not quite ready to invite people to do it yet.
Yeah.
Right. Because that can be a very challenging thing for someone, is to say, I'm going to ask somebody to do this with me. What often happens is they do it, everything changes, and somebody says to them, what the hell did you do? And they say, I did this thing called the Whole Life Challenge. They say, can I do it? And they say, do it with me next time. And then that's sort of how your success is a sort of a natural invitation. So if you don't know how to make that invitation now, do it by yourself. There's plenty of people in the platform who are willing to support you and give you everything that you need. We provide tons of resources. I do videos every day of the challenge to set the context for people. We have meal plans. We have exercise plans if you need them. We have tons of articles. I mean, so we really, really give you everything that you might need to change how you approach these things, to change how you see them, to set your mindset differently.
What have you noticed, I guess, or the predictors of success longer term, beyond the 6 weeks? What do you find that people do or don't do during the 6 weeks that then really predicts, how they're going to do long term?
So there's two things that I think really lend to success. One is doing with other people, right? Like, doing this by yourself does not have the same impact as doing this with other people. And I think a lot of people think, oh yeah, it's just the things. I'm just going to do the things for 6 weeks. But it's that engagement with other people, especially if they are people you care about, right? Like I said, you can do it in the platform with people who will support you. But if you are doing this challenge with people who you care about and you're close to, right? Your family, your coworkers, people like that, it will change the environment when the challenge is over. And it just allows the continuation of the practice. I'm not saying it's going to be perfect when the challenge is over, but we do corporate wellness, and we've seen offices completely change their break room, right? The junk goes, and what the office now provides their employees is healthier food. So doing it with a group of people who's sort of in your immediate environment and matters to you, that is the number one predictor of success. I would say the other predictor of success is to not try and make this about being perfect, right? Like, and what I try and tell people, you don't have to be perfect to be perfect, right? And what I mean is, I want you to get a perfect score every day, right? Like, I want you to be able to check off those things every day. But I also want you to be willing to sort of be flexible every day, so that if an hour-long CrossFit workout is not in the cards for you today, you do something that's appropriate for you today. Like, if you're exhausted, if you didn't sleep, I don't want you to go I'd rather you sleep than go to the gym. So if you're going to forego the gym today for sleep, I want you to find 10 minutes after dinner to go for a walk, right? So I want you to get that perfect score and realize you do not have to be perfect to be perfect. And so the trick really is in that I've had people do the challenge 3, 4, 5 times before that finally clicked, right? The challenge would exhaust them. And I'm like, guys, this is not the point. The point is not to exhaust yourself doing the challenge. The point is you come out better than when you started. And it would take them finally 4 or 5 challenges where they go, I got to do this differently. And I said, you think? And so taking the habits seriously and seriously enough so that you learn to be flexible inside of them, I think is really what is going to make you the most successful. Because what you want ultimately out of this is to build those habits. Did I pay attention to my body today? Did I eat the things today that are going to do more harm than good? Am I setting myself up to get a good night's sleep? Do I have a practice that helps me relieve stress? And some days it might just be like I close my eyes for 2 minutes at my desk and I breathe, right? It doesn't have to be a 20-minute meditation if that's not in the cards, right? So you don't have to be perfect to be perfect.
I would love to do a follow-up interview where we talk about Michael Stanwyck, the psychology, what happens inside your mind, inside your thoughts, inside your heart over your lifetime, that's brought you here. Because I hear a lot of, most of what we hear on this show, and this is not a criticism at all, because it's our show, I love it, but most of what we hear is knowledge that people lack, that people need.
Mm-hmm.
But what I'm hearing here is something far more valuable. I'm hearing wisdom, and I know wisdom comes at a great price, a much higher price than knowledge comes at. So I commend you, man.
I appreciate that. I mean, like I said, it's been a long journey. I have a sort of a bit of a storied background. My life, like I said, it's been a lot of personal development in different areas. I did a program on spiritual psychology. I've done a lot of just very strict personal development work. I have a degree in philosophy. I was a trained chef. I was an actor for a period of time. I was a provider to medical dispensaries of pain relief substances. So I've just learned a lot from my own life.
Weed, folks.
I grew weed. I did. I did. But legitimately, like when I did it, we were providing for the sort of the burgeoning medical dispensary business that did not have what it needed to get people what they needed. So I've done quite a bit, and I've seen a lot of myself. And I think what this really comes from is having dug deep into myself, because like I said, I don't read your mind. I'm just like you. And I have looked more deeply into myself than I think many people look into themselves. And I'll share what I learned and sort of then invite people to do the same thing in themselves.
This will be a different show, but I want to have it. I want to do it. Phil,
I'm happy to go back.
Dude, I am so
Excellent.
glad we did this.
Yeah, another great discussion, and again, great program, the Whole Life Challenge, and I certainly recommend everyone go check it out. And I think it gives us all a great framework for life improvement. One of the things, one of the other comments I'll make is that we think of the health as sort of somehow a separate part of our life. You're losing weight, or you're improving your heart health, or you're reversing your diabetes, whatever it might be from a health standpoint. And we sometimes fail to recognize that this is really overall life improvement. And I think that's what Michael has done so well with the Whole Life Challenge, because it really is about your whole life, and you're not isolating out these aspects of it. You're really looking at your whole life.
Yeah, one of our mottos very early on was, don't try and put the Whole Life Challenge into your life, right? Like, don't try to put an extra thing into your life. Put your life into the Whole Life Challenge, right? So like, what you want to do is not try and fit another 3 hours into your day. What you want to do is change how you look at the opportunities you have in your day, right? You're going to eat anyway. How are you going to approach that differently? Put your life into health and fitness. Don't try and put health and fitness into your life, not more things. Put your life into this new context. And you'll see the opportunities. I mean, as trite as it seems, you'll take the stairs instead of the elevator. You'll walk instead of drive when you can. You'll skip the handful of M&Ms, at the dentist's office.
Yeah.
You'll
I love
just,
that one.
you'll start to see a new, it's like seeing through the matrix, right? You just start to see opportunities that were always there, but you were blind to them.
Okay, so if people want to stalk you on social media, is that an option that's available to them?
I don't recommend it. I am not super active on social media. I'll tell you, it's one of my challenges because I don't have a very strong, you must do this message. So I always have struggled with social media, but I am at Whole Life on Twitter. That's probably the best place to find me. My Instagram is just sort of a private friends and family thing. And I haven't been on Facebook for years. So if you want to hear what I have to say on the most regular basis possible, at Whole Life on Twitter is where I talk most often.
At Whole Life on Twitter. All right. Well, God, this is literally, these are always the highlight of my week, Phil. I just love that I get to do this. But I guess we're done, at least for now. Christmas is in 2 days. Y'all are going to be listening to this and about the time the Whole Life Challenge starts. I wonder if we ought to try to scoot this one up so that people have more time to what did you say? January 21st?
January 21st. And I would say if you want to time this just right, like 10 days before January 21st, because too early, people will just forget about it. Too soon, too close to it, and they'll go, I'll do the next one. I don't have time.
All right.
So you give them 10 to 14 days, and they go, oh, I'm going to do that. I can get ready. I can ask my this and my that.
I'm going to make a note. And Phil, with your permission, we're going to change
Yep.
the publication date of this particular episode.
Perfect.
To try to hit around the January 11th mark. And if somebody looks at this and says, hey, episode X came before episode, well, however, this would be wrong. That's why. All right.
Well, I really appreciate you guys inviting me on the show. This has been really fun. I'm grateful that you gave me the opportunity to share all this with your audience.
Is it cold in Texas?
This week, yeah, we're going to get down to 15 degrees. I know it's snowing in Dallas today. We're a little too far south for snow, but it is getting cold.
I can remember, I used to live in Central Texas, and I remember this time, 1980, I want to say it was probably 82. I was living in a mobile home, an old mobile home, and we had one of those blue northers come through that was, I think it got down to 8 degrees overnight. I know it was 82 because my then wife was pregnant with our first child, and I could see my breath inside our home, and she's walking around in this flimsy little nightgown because she's 6 months pregnant and can't get cool.
Can't get cold enough. Yeah. Yeah. We had snow 2 years ago, but not since.
All right. I went way off track there. Hey, I want to invite everybody to click that subscribe button if you're listening on any of the podcast platforms. If you're on YouTube, hey, do that as well. And go to Dr. Ovadia's site, ifixhearts.com. He's got a metabolic health quiz there that you can take. You don't have to tell anybody. Take it, get yourself a baseline, and it'll help you know what you need to, where you most need to get started. And contact Dr. Ovadia if you want some high-class professional help, and go to thewholelifechallenge.com. And I would recommend you stalk Michael on Twitter too, but that's just because I'm like that. All right. I think we're done. We'll talk to you
Great
next time.
conversation.
Yeah.
America is fat and sick and tired. 88% of Americans are metabolically unhealthy and at risk of a sudden heart attack. Are you one of them? Go to ifixhearts.co and take Dr. Ovadia's metabolic health quiz. Learn specific steps you can take to reclaim your health, reduce your risk of heart attack, and stay off Dr. Ovadia's operating table.